everyone. I am Vicki Williams Cullens, and I am the Social Action Chair for the Newport News Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. I am so excited to welcome the Honorable Angela F. Reason, who is the Clerk of the Circuit Court of the City of Newport News. Angela is also the first Black, the first woman, and most certainly the first Black woman, and I think the youngest clerk of the City of Newport News, the Circuit Court. Is that correct, Angela?
That is correct.
Oh, I'm so excited to have you here today. So, what I would like to do is one, I've already introduced the
Yes,
Honorable Angela F. Reason, but that is a huge title. So, what do you prefer to be called?
Angela. My mother named me Angela, and Angela is perfectly fine. But of course, I appreciate the respect. Thank you so much for having me tonight. Thank you to the amazing women of the Newport News Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. You ladies are amazing. Thank you for having me, and thank you also for the community work that you all do.
Well, we certainly appreciate you being here because I know how busy your schedule is. And I want to give a shout out to Chelsea. Chelsea, thank you
Yes.
so much for assisting me with organizing this event and organizing around Angela's schedule. So,
Yes, thank
Angela,
you.
I have a few questions for you. And the first one I'm going to start with, if I were a resident of Newport News and I had never stepped foot in the circuit court, what are three most important ways that your office would touch my life?
Okay, so only three.
Now,
Just
I got
three.
some more stuff for you.
Okay, so first and foremost, the Circuit Court Clerk's office is responsible for over 800 responsibilities outlined in the Code of Virginia. And that's why I laugh and say only three. And so it is one of those offices where you're going to come here at some point in your life because we handle life events. And so if I had to say top three, marriage license, um, if you purchase your house, if you don't come here directly, the mortgage company or lender or realtor, they'll come here on your behalf. Um, Divorces for anyone getting divorces, adoptions. And so life changes. But if I have to name three, I'll start with those, and I'm sure we'll probably touch on some of the others throughout this conversation.
Thank you so much for that. Now, this is something that I've been hearing about and it's been going nationwide about property fraud and ensuring that your deeds are properly recorded. And if I'm not mistaken, I recall you talking about this subject during your conversations with a clerk series. Can you kind of touch upon that? Give us a little bit more insight regarding this.
Yes. And so if it's okay, can I piggyback just a little bit if that's okay, Vicky?
Absolutely.
Okay, so Conversations with the Clerk is a series that my office hosts to talk about the different resources that our office renders to the general public. We also converse about legislation changes, so any legislation that impacts the court. And so we typically try to host these events about 3 times a year or as needed. And we base these events on, again, legislation changes or frequently asked questions, like if we're always getting the same question over and over again. Um, as Ms. Cullens just mentioned, deed fraud it's a thing. And while we haven't seen it substantially in Newport News, it is a real thing. We cannot control how people operate and what they do, but it has been happening nationally. And so last year in our conversations with the clerk, we touched on deed fraud, things that you can do, things that you potentially should do. That video is still available, and I believe one of my teammates will drop the link in the chat box on from our website or our YouTube channel. But essentially, what I would tell people to do is if you're purchasing your home, it is extremely important to first and foremost um, do a title search, have
Mm.
whomever you are working with do a title search, your realtor. We talked about that there. on that
Mhm.
website. But first and foremost, what we have now, and again, we touched a little bit about this on the conversations with the clerk last year, and it had not come to pass then, but it has now. That in Newport News, and it's on the Supreme Court website, and I hope someone will drop that link in the chat box too. We now have VA deed alert. Now,
Oh,
this is
wow.
something that I worked on with some of my counterparts at the state level, such that if someone does record something against your property, you'll get a notification immediately saying something has been recorded in the clerk's office, against your property. This is an opt-in service, and so it's not something that would be automatic. But let's say you wanted to participate in this, Vicky, and you lived in Newport News,
Hmm.
Katina, and you lived in Newport News, or Averill, then you can opt in. It's 100% free. And if something was recorded against your name, then you will automatically get a text telling you that something has been recorded in the clerk's office, against your property. Um, and you'll consistently hear me say in Newport News because there are 120 circuit courts in the state of Virginia. And we can operate 120 different ways. And so, although some of these initiatives may be statewide, clerks have the discretion to utilize these services or not utilize the services. And so, if I'm mentioning anything, you can contact those localities to see if they're opting into some of these services or not. And then some of the initiatives that we've pushed, they are only in Newport News and things that we formulated in-house.
Well, I know there was something that Chelsea had mentioned to us,
Mm-hmm.
or we had invited everyone to join us.
Yes.
And we talked about automation. We talked about
Mm-hmm.
accessibility. We talked about how before Angela Reason, a lot of things were you had to go into the office, you had to sit down, you had to talk to someone, you had to try to work it out.
Yes.
Chelsea kind of mentioned that there are a lot, because she's going to be dropping some links in the chat, but there are a lot of things that are accessible online through a portal that you're developing, but most certainly online. Can you touch upon that for us?
Yes. And so I will say this. Um, Electronics is twofold. One, it does create accessibility to the office and to the court system to the general public, especially for folks that may not have transportation or folks that have busy schedules or folks that simply do not want to use their gas money to drive over town, downtown, down the street, around the
Mm,
corner. And so when you have resources online, you have the capability to file or record these documents, from your home. For example, one of the initiatives that we pushed at the beginning of 2020 in July was the complete automation of land records. And
mm,
so prior to 2020, you would have to either mail these documents in to record your deed. Let's say if you purchased the home, you refinance the home, you paid off your home. Of course, you go through your mortgage company, and they would then mail those copies to the clerk's office or they walk them in. The problem with that, if you're mailing something, of course, it's snail mail. So whenever it gets to us, and then once it gets to us, someone physically walking to the post office,
mm,
which is not far from us, it's across the street, but then actually having to open that mail, Mondays would be just terrible. So we're processing, mountains of mail. And now, we can receive those documents 100% electronically.
mm,
You do not have to step foot in the office at all.
mm,
And I mean, it's really that simple. And I say it's twofold because while it's a value add to the general public and now they have more accessibility from a managerial standpoint, it
mm,
also increases the accountability
mm,
and transparency. So you can see when something was remitted to the clerk's office, when we accepted that document, if we're going to reject it or we need more information, instead of us now having to call or mail something back, you're
mm,
going to get that instantaneously. And then
mm.
as the leadership of the office, myself, along with my managers, and I see a lot of my team members on. So, hey, Team Circuit, thank you for joining us. But now from a management standpoint too, we're also watching all of these cues to ensure that work is being processed timely. In conjunction to that, we also have a probate portal. And probate is the administration
Mm,
of wills. And so now on our website, you can go, we have frequently asked questions. We have a portal where you can see exactly what you need. If you needed a probate appointment, you can request your appointment online. We respond to you online. And so now we're minimizing that back and forth between waiting for phone calls, coming down here to receive physical paper, waiting to come back, where we're handling almost everything 100% electronically. In conjunction with that, we've also done a pre-marriage application portal. Concealed handgun permits are 100% electronic now. We still run the background checks. We still make sure we're doing their due diligence. Myself and or my chief deputy or a judge, depending on the circumstances, we all
mhm,
physically still look at every single application,
mhm.
but you do not have to step a foot in the office in order to apply, be approved, and or rejected. And
And
so
see, that's
those are
so important. That's so
it's
important,
beautiful.
that accessibility, not just about people who don't want to drive down there, but people who may be disabled, who
Absolutely.
who have access to their iPads, their computers, or their phones, but don't really have the ability to be as mobile as they may wish to be. So
Absolutely.
I really appreciate that. And there was something else you mentioned about the probate office. You mentioned about probate being able to engage online with that.
hmm
Now, with that being said, if you have a will and you have to move into probate, it is definitely a struggle.
Yes.
And how can the residents work with your office to make sure their legacy is protected?
The first thing that I would tell anyone is that it is best to know when you don't need the information at that time than when you need it to try to get the information, because then you're dealing with all the emotions of losing your
Mm,
loved one and then also having to manage the business of that estate.
mm,
And as we know, life happens fast. And sometimes, life after death happens even faster
mhm.
because the costs keep rolling in. And, then we're thinking about funeral expenses and how to access bank accounts and so on and so forth. And so, what I will tell people is to take advantage of the resources that we have available. We do host workshops. One of the featured workshops is a probate workshop.
Mm,
And the way someone would request that is really to simply ask. I know my team will put that link in the chat box also. We host them once a year on our own, but also if your organization or any organization asks us to come out, even if I'm not the one that's able to do it or it doesn't work with my schedule at the time, we do have a team, and we now have a community outreach and engagement team.
I'm glad to hear
So
that.
one of the team members will come out and present this workshop for the general public also. So in conjunction with that, again, we have our portal with frequently asked questions. One thing that we do ask of the general public is that if the decedent, has of course already, passed, to give themselves time before they are attempting to handle the business if they're able, because a lot of times there's so much back and forth because the body isn't even cold yet. You don't have a death certificate, but you're
Mhm.
looking to put this will to public record, or you're looking to become an administrator or an executor, but you don't have the proper documentation yet, or you haven't located it. So give yourself the time that you need to find those documents if you're able to. And it's different for every person. Some people, boom, boom, bam, I'm good. We got to handle this estate, and that's fine also. But we ask people to do that as long as their affairs are in order, so that we can best assist them. And
Mhm.
as the general public, also helping us to prevent a backlog. Right now in Newport News, and I was sharing this. I had a meeting today, and someone was asking about backlogs due to COVID, and they were extremely surprised when I said, "Well, we don't have a probate backlog due to COVID." We never closed. And when we're creating these resources, we're able to continue to move forward. And so right now, our probate appointments are about 3 weeks, scheduling about 3 weeks after the request. And
Oh,
we try
wow.
not to ever allow them to be longer than 3 weeks to a month. And so, of course, we can't control that with people passing away, but on average, it's about, that time frame. And so we really ask the general public to make sure that their affairs are in order first, because it keeps the process rolling so that we can assist other citizens also.
Thank you so much for that. I want to talk about one of my passions, which is the restoration of rights, right?
Yes.
And that also kind of rolls into something that's coming new down the pike come July 1 with
Hmm.
the stealing of records and the expungement of records, and also with the restoration of rights. We're hopeful the constitutional amendment is
Hmm.
now on the ballot in November.
Yes.
That has been over 20 years coming, and now we're
Yes.
here. But also, one of the rights that's restored is the right to serve on juries. Can you
Hmm.
just talk about the importance and what your court plays in that role in regarding jury duty?
Yes. So, if I could piggyback, yes, there's a constitutional amendment on the ballot,
Yes,
and
ma'am.
I will be voting yes. And so I would encourage everyone to join me in voting yes to the constitutional amendment that is on the ballot. So had to throw that plug in there for the state of Virginia. Let's go, or the Commonwealth of Virginia. But on that note, what I will tell people is that jury duty is a constitutional right. And I know, and I hear it often, and we joke and laugh about it. I mean, I even laugh sometimes with my children's teachers about it. They'll say, "Can you? I got called for jury duty. Can you ask your mama to excuse me?"
Right.
And so my children laugh about it. I don't know if she could do that, but they'll come home, Mom, Mr. Such and Such said that you called him for jury duty. Can you excuse him? No.
No.
And what I would encourage people first and foremost, and then I'll get around to, what we can do about jury duty, is to not see it as a burden. So often we hear people complain about systems, right? Or
Yes.
hear people complain about the judicial system and how cases are tried or not tried. But jury duty is a constitutional right. If someone has the right to be tried by a jury of their peers, but their peers don't show up, then you know, that's a community problem. And so, what I will tell people is that when you show up for jury duty, you're also enhancing the accessibility and the accountability and the transparency in the judiciary. You are
Mhm.
also now holding folks accountable to make sure that both the Commonwealth's Attorney's Office, the public defenders, or the person defending the such alleged of committing the crime, that they are pretty much presenting evidence. As a juror, you're looking at this evidence. So you are a part of the process. And so I would encourage everyone to take it serious and to get civically engaged, because this is a constitutional right. It's their right, but it's also your right to serve on the jury. Now, one
Mhm.
thing that we have done when I first came in is that, and part of that was due to COVID, but also to make sure that there's access to jury duty or representation across the city, is that we send questionnaires at the beginning of the year.
Mhm.
And now the judge's office manages this process, but it's still the same to the entire city. So every single zip code. So it's not like 23602 is getting questionnaires, but 23607 is not getting
Mhm.
questionnaires,
Mhm.
because we know that the city may look different across, the 50 miles of Newport News. And so we send questionnaires typically between August and September.
Mm.
And that's for the following year to potentially qualify for jury duty. Okay. And we base that off of not just registered voters, because you can do registered voters, but we do registered voters and DMV records.
Oh, well, let me
Okay.
ask you this. Is there a particular reason why the jury duty notices are mailed? I'm assuming there's code behind it. I'm assuming that.
So it depends. Some locations they are not mailed, and that's a great question. So some locations they are not mailed. They are actually served by a sheriff's deputy.
Mm,
In some localities, they are mailed, and it's for several reasons, but most commonly is due to workforce of, the sheriff's department. Because if someone's actually going out on the doors, let's say we're sending out 15,000, then that's a person that has to go to 15,000 doors or however
okay.
many doors, and now put these questionnaires on doors opposed to mailing them out.
Okay. You so much for that because I was always curious. I
Mhm.
guess I wanted to see if I could get it emailed, but I guguess y'all wouldn't have access to everyone's email. But I mean,
Well,
it's a
so yes and no. So that's a good
okay. Let's
question.
talk about that.
Look, and we never talked about this too. This is a good question. So we actually do have an electronic portal in Newport News and a text service too. And so when those questionnaires are sent out, you can put your email address in there as well as your text. Now, we're still going to mail the questionnaire to you, but the portal is such that you can send messages to us and we can send messages to you via email and text if you put it in there at the questionnaire at the beginning of the year. And then in the summons that we send out for jury duty and the questionnaire, there's a hyperlink at the top. And so if you want to be excused for jury duty, you also can request that to be excused in that portal. So we have a portal for that also.
Like that because I don't know about anyone else, but I don't like getting their mail. And they put it somewhere and they don't look at it. And then they end up missing what could be a
Hmm.
great opportunity
Absolutely.
to not only do public service, but
Absolutely.
actually be a member of that jury of someone's peers. And
Absolutely.
we often dismiss how important that is. And so
Absolutely.
that's why I wanted to know. So thank you. I appreciate that.
You
Now,
are very welcome. Now, Vicky, I do want to remind you that that's in Newport News. And so when you're speaking of how clerk's offices or courts operate, I just want to make sure that you know that's in Newport News. So I'm not sure how some other localities handle their process.
I'm glad you kind of went back to that because you started off with that there's 121 clerk office, I mean circuit
120.
court,
Yes.
120 circuit courts
Mm-hmm.
in the state of Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
You are autonomous on how you manage your court
Mm-hmm.
as long as you adhere to the code.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you so much for that. Now, I want to kind of talk about expungement because I know you've done expungement workshop.
Mm-hmm.
I know there is the sealing of records is coming up, and we don't have a whole lot of details on that. So let's talk about what we kind of know for certain, which is the expungement of records. Can you talk about what convictions are eligible for expungement or could be eligible?
Yes, and I'm so glad that you rephrased that to could be eligible.
Yes, ma'am.
And the reason for that is because, we steer away of telling people what could and could not happen because that's the judge's job to do that. As the clerk, I am the chief administrator for the office, and so I handle administrative uh, and financial processes. And so I will handle you actually filing the petition. So to
Mhm.
start there, the circuit court clerk's office is the only clerk's office who has the authority to accept a petition of expungement. That will not change with this new expungement or sealing legislation that is taking place on July 1st. Okay. And so to petition any court, even if your underlying charge was in general district court or JDR court, you still would have to petition a circuit court for that expungement. Now, typically, what we would see if charges that have been null prossed um, or dismissed. And I
Okay.
say typically because there's legislation right now that even if your case was non-pros, if it was under the prior First Offenders Act, typically those still do not get approved. And I use words like typically because again, the judges will say yay or nay. They will either
Hmm.
sign the order or not. But we do currently have packets available in the office to assist the general public for expungements. Those are also online on our website. And I was sharing with Vicky earlier today that as the legislation changes in July, we are paying close attention because, of course, we will be tailoring the information that's currently on our website and the packets that are in the office as need be. There's also sealing legislation. We are currently going to be sealing records that start at 1985. That is consistent. It doesn't matter if it's Newport News, Hampton, York County. And so this is state legislation. So that process will be the same. Some of those convictions and some of those, they will be crimes that where the person was actually convicted. I do believe that simple marijuana possessions and things like that are included, but I'm not 100% sure everything else that's included. And so we will be hosting a conversations with the clerk at the end of June. And so I will ensure that your organization is included in our distribution list to send everyone an invitation to that. But we'll be talking about that legislation at the end of June that will again take effect July 1st. And then we'll begin to tailor our workshops and we'll workshops throughout the year regarding sealing and expungements.
So much for that. So I know currently records that can be expunged, are
Mhm.
they criminal charges on the person's record, or
They
are
are,
they
they
are
are,
they
go ahead, I apologize.
no worries, are they misdemeanor convictions?
So either or. So
Okay.
typically, if there are federal charges, we know some things are expunged or they're pardoned by the president, and we see though, oh, the president pardoned this and that. So a circuit court judge is not expunging those. So these are typically charges that a person that was convicted of, like right here in Newport News, not when you hear on TV. And I would use layman's terms, not if the person was in the feds.
Right,
Layman's terms.
right, right. Because they want that. And I think
Right.
what happens a lot is they hear the word expungement and they think that their felony convictions are
Hmm.
going to be expunged. That's not what I've heard.
Or
I've always
federal. Or
are
federal.
right.
Right.
They think it's going to be expunged.
Right.
But what I've heard is that you can get your charges expunged because a lot of times you may not be convicted, but you'll have a litany of charges on your record. And that is offsetting to some employers and a lot of different folks
Absolutely.
because they see the
Absolutely.
litany of charges and they don't look to see if they're non-process or they're
Absolutely.
have
What
they
I
been convicted
what
or
I
not.
typically tell people to do when we host our workshops, and we get this a lot. And again, I will tell you that this is different per clerk's office because I've heard
Sure.
some people tell me that they go to some offices and they're expected to petition for every single charge that they have. What I tell folks in Newport News when I host my workshops is to be sure to the best of your ability. What you can do is pull your record from the Virginia State Police. And so you can get a list of charges, even if you were not convicted, and shoot your shot. You know, I cannot, as the clerk, I don't have the authority to tell someone they cannot file a petition. And so if you have 10 charges up there and you're not sure, petition for all 10. And I tell them to put all 10 on that one position because it's $86 to file an expungement, $12 to serve it, so about roughly $98. And you put everything on one petition. So even if there's 10 charges, you're not paying that $98 10 times. And so
Yeah,
put it all on one petition. And then as it's going through the process, the Commonwealth will either object or say, okay, and then the judge has the authority to check off or, you know, or say no. But even if it's 10 and they say yes to five, then hey, you got five expunged
absolutely.
and we charge $98 one time, opposed to you petitioning us 98 times, or typically we'll have someone come back and they'll say, oh, you didn't include this. No, you didn't include it on your initial petition. And so
Mm,
now you're filing a subsequent petition. So of course I have to charge the additional $98 because you're filing a different petition.
that makes sense. That makes sense. Now, earlier, I stumbled about an appointment that you received, and I want to let's talk about that again because one, I can always learn. And
Absolutely, me too.
so you were recently appointed to the Virginia Access to Justice Commission.
Hmm.
I want to know what that commission is designed to do and how that commission can help the residents of Newport News.
Okay. So the Virginia Access to Justice Commission is a commission by the Supreme Court of Virginia. And I was appointed by Chief Justice Bernard Goodwin, who just recently retired at the beginning of the year. But I am serving as the trial court clerk on this commission. And essentially, what the mission is to create equal access to justice as it relates to civil litigation. So a lot of what we've been discussing tonight about the accessibility on the civil side of things. So when you're talking about your probate matters, your forms, um,
Mm-hmm.
petitioning the court,
Mm-hmm.
how IT solutions can help the general public. So, as I was sharing with you earlier, this was a lot of the work that I was already doing, but I didn't know that it was phrased access to justice. But you never know who was watching you. And
Absolutely.
so, lo and behold, I get a phone call from the Supreme Court saying, "Hey, you've been uh, you've been voted on to be on this commission to represent um, trial court clerks. Would you accept the appointment?" And essentially, what I've been working on is standardizing forms. And this is one of those things that it will be across the state. And so, creating forms first and foremost, and standardizing ones that are on lower court to put forms in layman's terms. In the law, we're still using Old English. And when you're speaking of everyday language and the
Mm-hmm.
conversations people typically talk, no one's talking about we're going to go file a precipice or we need a subpoenas ducis tecum, which is just a request for records. And so working to put up there, they want to request records.
Yes.
So putting forms in layman's terms and then working with legislators to change some of the laws, hopefully to mimic these forms that we are creating, such that the laws as they are written in the forms that we are creating are in layman's terms to assist the general public. We've also been working on pro bono services, so partnering with attorneys who need pro bono hours and are willing to provide assistance free or to, little charge. And
Mm-hmm.
so working on several things that if you need assistance in the area of a civil law, these are things that you can utilize and hopefully they will be available not just in Newport News, but hopefully across our entire state.
Thank you so much for that because what I hear from you is accessibility, ensuring that the community that you serve understand and has access to the resources that are available with the circuit court.
Absolutely.
That
Absolutely.
is,
And with the Access to Justice Commission, we're not just working for circuit court also. We are
mm,
working on legislation and forms for lower court too. So JDR, which is typically family court, and then
yes,
general district court also.
that's important and that's so helpful because again, when you think of circuit court, and I wanted to ask that question because we kind of talked about it
Mhm.
before we got online, just the misnomer, the rumors that go about that you hear what
Mhm.
circuit court does. So share with us some misconceptions about the circuit court and your role.
Yes. I'm sorry, ladies, to laugh, but we know that the title on the ballot is clerk of court.
Mm-hmm.
And people typically say the clerk of the courts. And so people assume that I am the clerk of all of the courts. And I am not the clerk of all of the courts. And so I don't have jurisdiction or responsibility for our two lower courts. Circuit court is the higher court on the local level. And so essentially, if you're appealing your case from one of the lower two courts, it comes up to circuit court. And the reason my position is elected, one, one of five constitutional officers, and so I oversee constitutional services. It adds impartiality to the judiciary, and it adds checks and balance.
Mm,
But I am not the clerk of all of the courts. And so that's one misconception. Another misconception is that either I work for the judges or the judges work for me. I do not work for the judges. I work for the citizens of Newport News. And so when people ask me who is my boss, the citizens of Newport News are my bosses. So I have about 200,000 almost bosses. Right. Those are my bosses. And the importance in that is that it gives the community a voice in the justice system. It gives the citizens a voice in the clerk's office and how we operate. And so
Hmm.
when we talk about accessibility, and you and I were talking earlier, and you were saying, oh, you're so humble, because I just believe, and I was saying this when I ran for the office, is that if you're elected in any capacity, you are elected to serve the people. And so
Absolutely.
for me, you should not think so highly of yourself that you believe you are above the people, that you took an oath to be their voice. And so
Absolutely.
that is the first misconception, is that I work for the judges. I do not work for the judges. I work for the citizens of Newport News. The judges, yes, I work for this. And let me be very clear. That is something that I share with my staff also. They work for the citizens of Newport News. And so the standard of my office is to be customer centered service, customer friendly. Everybody gets treated the same. I don't care if you're coming in here to file a $400 million lawsuit and your attorney such and such and you're dressed to the T, or you're coming in here to file your court costs and fines. Whoever comes in my office, they are treated 100% the same, because we work for the citizens of Newport News, point blank, period.
Thank you.
So that's first and foremost. The judges do not work for me. The judges are appointed by delegates and senators. And
Mhm.
so essentially, they work for the citizens of Newport News also. And so that's also something that I would like to tell the general public, that judges are also public servants. They are appointed by the delegates and the senators.
You so much for that. Before we close out, I want to give folks an opportunity, because I have that closing question for you, but I
Okay.
want to give folks an opportunity to ask some questions, drop some questions in the chat. I also want to recognize my chapter president, President Quanda Griffin. Quanda,
Yes.
can you wave at the good folk?
Hey,
Thank
Miss
you.
Wanda, how are you? It's so good to see you.
You're on mute, Quanda. I think she's still on mute. Do we have any questions from the audience? This is your opportunity. We have a captured audience with the clerk. So if you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat. And also, Angela, I wanted to ask, you dropped all these links in the chat. Chelsea
Mhm.
did. Is it possible to have these links on a sheet or a form or something like that? And you can send it to my email and I can share it with the chapter.
Absolutely.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. So, if you have any questions, y'all, I want you to ask them, because this is a great opportunity. But we wait to see if we have any more questions, Angela. I have a question for you.
Okay.
What is the one goal that you have for the clerk's office by the end of 2026 that will directly improve the lives of residents living in Newport News?
So, we are working on so much, and I know I've shared a lot with you all today, and I know, and I tell people when I'm talking transparently that this is pre me being the clerk. This is just my personality. Y'all pray for me. But I am my harshest critic. And so I am very hard on myself. And while we have done a lot, I feel like there is so much left to do. And like
Mm-hmm.
we have barely scratched the surface. So if I had to pick one thing, then what I would say is that, one of the things that we get most is copy requests. And so we are now working on a process where, again, you do not have to come down and visit us for your copy request or mail in a letter. We are now working on an online portal where you will be able to submit your request electronically, and we'll be able to respond and send you your request
Hmm.
electronically. Especially with um, the new legislation that passed about real ID, that
Mm,
became just a huge thing this year, especially with persons who had been married or divorced. And
yeah.
so people needing that final divorce decree or their marriage license. And we got it a lot. Like, I really felt horrible for people that were married in like the 60s and 70s, because a lot of times their birth certificate names didn't match the names on the marriage
Hmm.
license. So then we're assisting it, like it was an entire process with petitioning the court to change one of the names on one of the forms. And so it was just burdensome to the general public. It was cumbersome to my staff. And so we're working on a portal now, where you will be able to submit your request 100% online, and we will be able to respond to you. And again, it creates accessibility and transparency, because as we're creating these portals, I personally pay attention to when my staff is responding, and I can speak to my managers. They do also, and if I miss it, they tell me. But we have just an amazing group of public servants, and so even before we close, I have to shout out my team.
Please.
You will rarely ever hear me say I, because it really is a we.
Hmm.
I come up with all of these amazing ideas, and sometimes they do also. And we have an amazing group of men and women who make sure that these things happen and make sure that we're communicating them to the general public. And they're assisting me in creating these community outreach engagement teams. And now we have our Deputy Clerk Leadership Academy, where we're in the school system. And so I'm physically not always there. They are, and they
Mm.
ensure that our office is represented, and they ensure that we are serving the public in the manner that you all deserve to be served. And so I definitely have to shout out my entire team, because they really are an amazing group of men and women.
Thank you so much for that. And I appreciate the term we,
Hmm.
because there's no I in team. I know that's old,
Absolutely.
but it's the
But
truth.
it's true. It's true. It's true.
There is no I in team. So, you know, Angela, I really appreciate you taking time out of your very busy schedule, coming in the evening
Yeah.
and doing what you do as a public servant.
Thank
It's so
you.
important to the community. Oh, Quanda, do you have a question?
I
Oh,
got
now
my
you're
off mute. Sorry.
thank you.
I want to piggyback what you said again, to thank you so very much for taking time out of your schedule. But if someone was interested in doing what you do, not in the city of Newport News, but in a different city, what if any experience or educational background would you um suggest that they um have experience in?
So the first thing that I would,
That is, I got to stop you for 1 second. That is a great question, Quanda, because Angela and I were talking about that a little
we
earlier
were,
today. So now I got to step back.
I'm sorry, Miss Quanda. She just makes me laugh so hard. But
It's
we
okay, no,
did.
because I think that is very
Yes,
important in
yeah, it
explaining
is.
what you do if people are unfamiliar with the job.
Absolutely. And so I laugh because we had this conversation, earlier today. The first thing that I will say is have a heart for service. This is not a 9 to 5 job. um it's public service, so that is first and foremost, that remember that this is a call to public service. This is not a job. It is 7:45, so almost 8 o'clock. I am in the office talking to you all today because I wanted to ensure that you had my undivided attention. I am the mom of one young adult and two young children, so I did not want to talk to you all and have a child poking me on the shoulder or trying to ask me questions about their homework, or they can't find something. And so that's first and foremost, that this is public service. And so you should have a heart for people and a heart for service. The second thing that I would say is to know yourself and to be transparent and honest with yourself. Because while I did not work in the court system, I did have the skills and abilities to come in and manage an office and to manage it well. If I'm being honest, I never worked in the court. I worked in federal government. I worked at NASA Langley Research Center for 8 years, and I was an administrative and financial manager there. I worked at the Department of the Navy under the commander, and so I fiscally managed military detachments along the East Coast. And so while I didn't work here, I understood budget execution. I understood state code and legislation. I understood how to interface with all types of persons and how to pass bills, how to manage the financial responsibilities of the office, how to write a budget, how to execute and implement that budget, how to manage a staff. And so that's why I would say be honest with yourself. And if you feel that you could handle the responsibilities of that office, if you have the competency to handle what that office entails. And so in reference to what qualifications you have to have pursuant to the law, none. If you're 18 and you're registered to vote, you can run for any office you want except for Commonwealth's attorney or attorney general. You have to be licensed to practice law in the Commonwealth of Virginia. And so aside from that, you can run for any office. And so that does not just come from, with being the clerk of court, but I don't care if you're running for city council, school board, whatever seat it is, make sure you first and foremost have a heart for people and service. And second, the competency to actually fulfill whatever that position is. And third, that you understand what the position is.
Does anyone else have any questions? Because I want to give you back a few more minutes of your time. And to second what Quanda said, we really appreciate you taking time out of your very busy schedule to kick off our inaugural Beyond the Ballot series,
Yes.
to just reintroduce the constitutional officers to the citizens and residents of Newport News, because everybody sees you when you're running for office, but we also need to see you after you win. So
Absolutely.
we really appreciate your time and the work that you do. So we want to give you just our kudos,
Yes.
and we hope you have the best rest of your Thursday.
So thank you so much. Thank you again to the amazing women of Newport News Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. Please also keep me included in the events that you all have going on. I would love to support you as well.
Thank
And
you.
again, thank you for having me tonight, and thank you for the work that you all do in the community also.
All right. Well, we appreciate you. We want to give everyone one last minute. If you have any questions, please drop them in the chat. Come off the mic. If not, we wish y'all a good night. Thank you.
All right. Good night, everyone.
Good night, Angela.
Good
Take
night.
it easy.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Good night, everybody.